Modern Warfare 3 was a very weird game to most people, as the zombies mode in it was objectively to most people pretty bad and is pretty bad, as it's not round based. Zombies is round based, and this game pretty much took out every element that made round based round based. This game was so bad, I couldn't even get any of my friends to join on and play with me who love zombies and enjoy playing zombies, as it wasn't round based. So, you know, why even bother playing this? But I also don't think I can say this game was bad, as I had a lot of fun with the game. I thought the game was very unique, and even during my time playing the game, I pretty much did everything that it had to offer. I got every schematic that was available. I unlocked all the weapons that you could across pretty much two different games. I even got both mastery camos for zombies for each game, being bioluminescent and nebula. I also managed to get the secret survivor camo as well as the two hidden blueprints within the game. I even went as far as to unlock not one but both weapon masteries for zombies. All of this, which led to a very long playtime of 8 days within the game. So I don't think it's really fair to me to just straight up say this game was bad. I mean, not when I spent 8 IRL days within the mode. But then what is it? If it's not bad, it's not good. What did I enjoy about it? What kept me coming back? I think most of it was just that it was so much different than round based that it sort of had its own unique charm to it. Like there was a lot bad in this game, but there was a lot that I felt like was good with this game too. When I say this game is good, I'm not trying to do the stupid Black Ops cycle thing where, oh, the game comes out, everyone hates it. Oh, the game is finished after its year long of updates. Now this game is good again. No, I enjoyed, like I said, I enjoyed this game when I first played it, and I enjoyed it even now recording footage for this video. And to start off, what I liked about this game, it's honestly the most controversial thing of this game being the timer. The timer was definitely a weird choice, as even the very idea of making a round based mode, even making a not even a round based mode, even making a zombies mode where you only had a finite number of playtime was just is still just weird. But I feel like the timer really worked here, as it defined what this game was trying to be, which was not a round based mode, a game based mode where one game would lead you to getting stronger for the next game, and then the next game, and then the next game, provided you don't die along the way. It also the time was also good, as it always gave you pretty much a set length of how long the game was going to be. I feel like a lot of the time with round based zombies, whenever I start a game, I never know how long it's going to be because it can be infinite. So it's hard to say, do I have time for a zombies game or do I not have time for a zombies game? With this, I never had a question with that. Like, it was really the question of, do I have an hour? Yes. Okay, I can hop on and play some zombies. But no matter what the gameplay is, be it round based or game based, the main thing that you're going to need in this game, and even round based, is money or points or zombies cash or blood money, however you say it. You're going to need it. In order to get the money, which is needed in this game for perks, pack a punch, armor, a gas mask, and even a backpack is just a few of the things. There's sort of three ways. The first way you can do it is simply just kill zombies, but honestly, it's not that great of a method, as zombies do not give anywhere near as much points as they even do in a game such as Cold War or Black Ops 6, and it definitely doesn't give us where near as many as in round base in the old days, where every shot was 10 points. The second way to get money is by selling little items of scrap that you can find around the map. This is also not great, as there's a lot of these little things and they don't sell for much. Well, unless you get a gold skull from a boss in the game, or you happen to come across a gold bar, which is really rare and most likely won't happen. Moving on from that insane luck, the main way you get money in this game is from contracts. Just doing contracts willy nilly isn't really the best choice, as some contracts are much better than others, especially factoring in that you are on a timer. You need to constantly be moving. You can't just sit around and do nothing in a game. You have to make the most out of every single minute. Unlike round base, where you can play it slower, keep a crawler, get screwed over by the bleed out timer, which is literally only in the game to avoid the game soft locking itself, yet happens to be a problem because people play zombies slow, people play methodically, tactically, which is how you have to treat this game. Although that comes with a much more emphasis on speed. So, for which contracts did you do? I've made a tier list. Look past the bottom two for now, which starts us off with the escort contract. The escort contract has you escorting, of course, an ACV device which neutralizing some dark ether fissures. Now, this contract kind of sucks because it takes a really long time. However, is good as it can give you a lot of zombie kills and also give you a great source of zombie flesh. This zombie flesh can actually be given to doghouses found throughout the map and be traded in, if you have enough, for a friendly Hellhound companion. Starting off B tier, we have the safe contract. Now, this contract is a lot faster than the escort contract. However, still isn't really that good, as it requires you to sit within a small building defending a safe, which you don't actually need to defend, you just kind of need to sit around it. However, it is good, as just like the escort contract, you can get an additional reward being the safe loot itself. However, I find myself most of the time never taking the guns within the safe, as it's just not really worth it. Starting off A tier is the HVT bounty contract. This contract is up here because it is probably the fastest contract that you can do, as the only limiting factor of this contract is first off how far away the HVT spawns from where you pick it up, but also just how much firepower you have. If you have a maxed out gun in the tier 1 zone like I do here, you can absolutely sweep through this contract in just a couple of seconds, in even less than a minute. However, the only downside, I guess, with this contract is if A, you don't have enough firepower in order to do it, or the fact that it only gives you the reward rift itself, but honestly, it's more than worth it alone for the speed. Also in A tier is the Spore contract. Now, this contract I feel is good, as it's kind of the reverse of the HVT contract. I like to do this best when I have nothing, which means that once I get to the contract location, I can just fill my bag with all the inhibitor devices and not have to keep making rounds back and forth from the toolbox. With every inhibitor on me, I just like to throw each one on a spore without even breaking them, then just loop around again once they've all been broken. It's a pretty fast contract, not as fast as HVT, and unfortunately also doesn't offer any additional benefits in terms of rewards, but it's fast. It's great when you're starting out and you have a lot of backpack space for the inhibitors, and all around just pretty good. Kicking off S tier is the Outlast contract. Similar to Cold War, this will require you to sit within a infected building and wait an allotted time. I find this one better than the safe contract, as you have a lot more room to move around as compared with the safe. With the safe, you kind of had to stay close to it, but with Outlast, it's a lot easier, as you can just move around the building. It's also, I feel as though, a lot faster than a safe contract, but the biggest thing that makes this contract great is the sheer number of zombies that you get. You get so many zombies once this contract hits like 90% that it can be really good when you're trying to do things such as camo grinding or trying to get weapon masteries completed. All around, most people will pick this contract up once they see it, but not as much as the cargo contract. This is by far the best contract in the game, regardless if it's in a tier 1, tier 2, or 3 zone. Although, depending on where you pick up the contract, the distance to drive can be shorter or longer. It's by far the best. You don't need anything in order to do the contract. Even in tier 3, you could just use one decoy and get the contract done. As the only real danger is getting into the car. Once you're in the car, nothing can really affect you. They send a helicopter after you to kind of scare you, but I've never even gotten destroyed by this helicopter once. It's pretty pathetic as a threat. And the greatest thing about this contract is once you make it to the final destination, you get to keep the car, which is great as movement is a pretty big part of this game. As not only do you want to do contracts fast, you want to get between contracts fast. Now, to get between contracts, you have a lot of methods. You have just walking with maybe PHG to help you go faster. It's not the great, as you can probably guess, but it is a method of travel if you really feel like to stop and take in the scenery. There's also, as I mentioned, driving. This is pretty good, although do watch out for zombies in the road, as they will heavily damage your vehicle if you hit too many of them. Which is why I think the LTV vehicle is good at balance of speed and durability. There's also things across the map, such as redeploy drones. Redeploy drones will, much like they work in Warzone and other modes, will just have you zip up them and allow you to parachute away. You don't get too much distance with these, which kind of sucks, but that's where rifts come in. Rifts are just a better version of the redeploy drones, as they'll send you much higher into the air, which allows you to cross much greater distances. Although it's a bit harder to find these as they're not on the map, and the only instantaneous travel in the game are portals. They'll send you to point A to point B if you know which code to activate in. One of the best ways to travel in this game, I find, is using the Blood Burner bike. This can be found randomly across the game, but can also be spawned in with a schematic we'll talk about later. This bike is definitely a wonder weapon on wheels, as not only do you get an ether blast if you run over enough zombies, but it doesn't require fuel, which means you need a lot less gas trips. Although going to a gas station is still good if your bike happens to get damaged. Although it's only a two-seater, this bike, you can just stack people on if they stand on it. But the best thing, as you can see, is it can drive on water, which means you can get to point A to point B a whole lot faster than any other vehicle in the game. It's also got pretty high durability. It typically doesn't break on zombies unless it's tier 3 or if you hit a special enemy. The Scorcher is undoubtedly the king of traveling in this game. First off, if you hold the aim button down, you'll launch yourself up in the air after a quick charge time, and you can actually choose how long you charge, which will correspond to how much you fly. Shooting the gun will unleash a giant energy beam, which will rain electricity down on anything below it. To fly really effectively with the Scorcher, I like to do 2 full charges and then pulling my chute. After which, I glide with the gun in hand and just keep doing small blasts, as a big blast will have you put the gun away. And effectively, that is it in terms of what a basic game of Modern Warfare 3 is simply trying to optimize getting between different contracts and doing as many contracts as you can within the hour. Another major component of a setup game is determining which items you use from Reward Rift during this game in order to do more contracts easier or go to harder contracts potentially. Or deciding to keep those items within your backpack in order to either decrease schematic cooldowns that you already have or bring those acquisitions into the next game. This really gives the whole game, the gameplay style that they wanted to in this game, its actual basis, as without the ability, of course, to bring items between game, it wouldn't really be extraction game mode. But regardless of what you do between the hour, you will always have to exfil at either going into the dark ether to try to get more rewards or do a story mission. Or you can exfil early at one of the 3 helicopters around the map, or try to tough it out to the final exfil, which I wish was a bit harder. It's still always going to be relatively easy, as it's always going to end up in a tier 1 zone, even though they do try to throw a lot of zombies at you. You're able to just mow them down pretty easily, and even this amount of zombies is still nowhere near the amount that was at the game's launch, which, although sucks, was a much needed change, as even now the game does suffer from a bit of stability issues. It definitely suffered a whole lot more when the game tried to spawn that many zombies at launch. But yeah, that's essentially it for a normal game of zombies. At launch, of course, we didn't have any dark ethers to go into, so it pretty much was just trying to get through each act's story mission and try to unlock as many available schematics that were in the game. Now, before I continue on what makes this game good and kind of unique, I do want to mention the bad, which almost entirely stems from the mercenaries. The mercenary main progression isn't bad, as getting a tier 2 vest from a camp and then moving on to a stronghold to get a 3-plate vest is okay, but tier 2 vests are pretty easy to find, and a tier 3 vest isn't too expensive and isn't really worth the hassle of trying to go through a stronghold in order to get it. However, it is kind of good to go to the fortress, but most of the time people will just cheese it anyways, as the fortress is either not worth doing, as some of the bosses in there kind of suck, or the boss is easy and you don't even need the keycard to get in, as with the Dockerby one on the skyscraper, which is almost always done if it's in a game. People will just fly up on this fortress, take her out, and get the rewards. And the rewards aren't that great. It is good that you get a free wonder weapon case guaranteed, which can really help out if it's a scorcher. But in terms of the other rewards, the basic loot is kind of on par with a tier 2 or tier 3 contract, and the blueprint that they give is entirely useless. First off, it would be cool if you exfilled with the blueprint, you actually got a blueprint that you could use in multiplayer. But it also sucks because I think all these blueprint guns have a unique effect on them, although it's really hard to tell even if they do, and even if they did, you can't keep it from game to game, which just defeats kind of the purpose of having a weapon stash in the main menu. The part that does suck with the mercenaries, though, are the 2 contracts that we skipped over in D tier. The worst being the defend contract. This contract is by far the worst. Not only does it take longer than the escort contract, already is pretty long, but it also involves, like I said, mercenaries. What the contract entails is first having to interact with D3 seismic devices and then uploading that information. The defense isn't hard, but it just, like I said, it takes a while, and you actually can fail the contract if too many RPG shots and just bullets hit the main computer itself. All around, it's also pretty annoying having to deal with ray shield enemies, and like I said, the RPGs can really surprise you if you don't see the enemy coming into the building. The extractor contract isn't as bad. It's kind of in the same vein as the HVT contract, where you can do it faster if you have the right supply, but it's still just a really annoying to take out mercenaries. They do a lot of damage and can really surprise you out of nowhere, even with a full setup. Like, a recon mercenaries can almost like one hit you down. But this contract isn't as bad as defend, as it pretty much is the first step. It just requires you to activate 3 things. However, these things are protected by mercenaries, and you do have a timer before you fail, which is pretty good now, but at launch, the timer was a lot more strict, or at least it felt a lot more strict because you had to kill mercenaries, which were a lot harder. Also, just because you've wiped out a lot of mercenaries on one of the extractors doesn't mean that they're gone, as throughout the contract, repeatedly more enemies will spawn in on helicopters. But overall, not the worst contract, but definitely still, I don't enjoy it even as much as Escort, which is pretty slow and boring. The final part of the Mercenaries, which sucks, are the first three act story missions. These weren't great, as I didn't enjoy these story missions. I know they were meant to be more so to introduce us to people rather than be big and cool, but I, aside from getting footage of these videos, I would never go back and play any of them. They're really much of a one and done thing. The only mission that was kind of cool was the third act, but initially it kind of sucks as you just pull up to the big military factory that they have, which is just another point on the map they already been playing in. They couldn't even be bothered to make a new map, which also kind of sucks. It's like kind of ruins the story in there. And it's like, oh no, we're going to a factory, but it looks the exact same as the nuclear power plant on the main map. You go into the factory, you plant a bomb, blow up his supply of weapons of the not even main bad guy who is just from Warzone. He's just recycled, and honestly, I don't even remember his name recording this because he's that forgettable. But after that, you go out and you're tasked with activating the device that you've been working on, which kind of has been done mostly off gameplay, just sort of in the background. But the one cool thing is, although it's initially shadowed as boring, where it's like, oh, destroy a helicopter is trying to kill you. In the middle of this helicopter sequence, you are introduced to a brand new boss enemy, which I think is pretty sick. Being granted, he is just a big ass worm, but I like the design of this guy. He's pretty menacing. He's got some easy to tell weak points, granted, but I mean, which video game boss doesn't have easy to tell weak points? But he's also pretty scary. Like, he can kill you if you're caught off guard being hit by one of his laser beam attacks, or if he slams on you. He also will try to occasionally eat the player. However, even if he managed to eat you, you can just easily counter the fall damage, spamming the parachute button. Overall, it kind of sucks that this big excitement factor wasn't really shown off well, as the helicopter sequence is cool, but people already knew the worm was gonna be here because of all the trailers, which really sucks. It's a pretty cool fight, not too bad. With that also kind of comes the end of the initial content. There wasn't a whole lot, and definitely a lot more stuff was out than I'm even gonna mention in this video. But moving on to the first season of content. Season 1 by far had the second best content that we got throughout the entire year of this game, which kind of makes sense because they really wanted to make sure that people were interested in what the seasonal content was going to be. And every single seasonal content, except for one, kind of starts off with a story mission. The story mission always takes place within the Dark Ether, and they're all pretty good, except for season 2, which I will get to. But for this season, it was pretty simple. All it required you to do was go in and pretty much complete 4 soul boxes. It wasn't that crazy. Each one kind of had a little element with it, but it wasn't important in terms of completing the mission. But yeah, 4 simple soul boxes, quick, easy in, easy out, get to the portal, and exfil. At least it should have been, as this time they did the worm surprise right. This guy was not shown off in any trailers. It was a complete surprise. The portal was right there. We thought we were going to get out, and it was all good. The part that wasn't great with this guy was although we had fought a worm before, a lot of players, me included, didn't really learn a lot from him, as this guy, when he came out, was by far way harder than the first one. People didn't know the strategy of like using RGL to make him come out of the ground, or even throwing a thermite to make him come out of the ground. It was just brutal fight. It took me a while to beat him solo, but still managed to do it. It was a pretty fun fight, a lot better than the first worm. After beating the worm, you got the first of 4 artifacts, which actually was required in a mini Easter egg to open up the main Dark Ether portal. However, you can't actually redo these Easter eggs once you've done them the first time. So I'm sorry if you wanted to see gameplay of that, but I kind of can't show it off. All these Easter eggs weren't too big. They were alright, but the main content is the Dark Ether itself. Now, before we get into the Dark Ether, there's actually 2 kinds. There's a normal Dark Ether, which requires a standard triangle sigil in order to get in, and it'll last 30 minutes. You'll know it's a normal sigil by the portal lighting up with a yellow color. But unfortunately, with a normal run, you are unable to get the new schematics. You have to do an Elder run, which requires an Elder sigil from the normal portal. Where an Elder sigil run will cause the portal to glow red before going in, and unlike the normal sigil, will half the time from 30 minutes to 50 minutes. This is going to make it pretty hard to do all 3 contracts by yourself if you don't know what you're doing, as it can take some time. This 15-minute time limit made it really hard, especially with the first Dark Ether, as unlike all Dark Ethers after this one, this Dark Ether had the requirement of you doing all 3 contracts in order to get the schematics. Granted, the schematics were always guaranteed, unlike other Dark Ethers where it was a probability chance, most like all loot in this game. But it definitely made it harder, especially because the escort contract was fairly difficult when it first came out. What's also made this Dark Ether really cool though, and why it's actually my second favorite, was the little gimmick it had. Each Dark Ether kind of have its own mini Easter egg inside, or a little gimmick with it. For this one, it had a series of keys that you could find around the map, which led to secret armories. All the armories kind of have a free power up in there, but can also include free wonder weapon cases. Most of the time, you can just see the case through the bars or through a window, but you can also tell if there's a case in the room with depth perception. It's a good way to know even if it's worth going to get the key or not. There's 4 of these around the Dark Ether. Each one has a chance to have a wonder weapon. Sometimes you might get 4, sometimes you might get nothing. Overall, this Dark Ether was a pretty hard when it first came out, but made a lot easier with a lot of the new additions. Speaking of additions, comes 3 new schematics. First being the Golden Armor. The Golden Armor plate turns your regular plates into gold, which will auto repair if damaged slowly over time. Unlike Black Ops 6, it'll do a whole plate at once rather than slowly filling up the armor bar. But this can be really good and is by far the best schematic, as it means you don't have to carry extra plates in your bag, which frees it up for a lot more items like extra self-revive, Casimir's, or just generally more loot. The dog bone was the second schematic added. What the dog bone does is it skips the requirement of needing the rotten flesh in order to get a Hellhound companion. It would always spawn in a Hellhound companion, the highest tier being either Dark Ether or tier 3. You don't need to be near a dog house to get the dog, but the dog is by far the best companion in the game, as he will not only attack zombies, but he'll revive you once you go down and other players a part of your team. The final schematic added was the Ether Blade. The Ether Blade works functionally the same to the Hell's Retriever off of Mob of the Dead. However, it can't be charged up and can't grab power-ups from farther away. But that wasn't it that was added with Season 1. There was also another little thing that was added. People began to notice, and also from the trailers, that there was a red worm somewhere on the map. And the hunt for the red worm started with this room, which depicted 4 images around the map. Where this room is and what the images are changes. But at each of these locations will be a little like satellite tower kind of thing, which have a computer with, which once activated will drop a USB. These USBs can then be taken to an area that's kind of close to the zone. At this location will be 4 seismic devices similar to that of the defend contract, each requiring a USB, but also requiring that the zone be first off actively moving, and these devices have to be within the zone. It is very possible that you do get one of these to spawn in the soccer field, which is also another location where the zone can start. But unfortunately, it does have to be moving in order to start this. Now, in terms of the red worm itself, it is by far the coolest worm. Granted, it does suck that the excitement was ruined to the trailer, but the red worm is able to be fought by everyone. Every single person in, if they want to, can fight the red worm. And it's highly worth doing so, as the worm can drop some pretty decent rewards on death, including a gold skull, which you can't actually turn in because you're still in a regular game. But it'll also drop one of 3 of the best schematics in the game, being the gold ether tool, which allows you to upgrade your weapon to gold, the tier 3 pack punch crystal, and the Scorcher schematics, which, as mentioned before, is definitely the best form of mobility within the game. But that was it with Season 1. It was a great season, and although there's still a lot of problems with the game at this time, it was pretty cool to see what the content was going to be going forward in terms of the next seasons. Which, speaking of which, leads on to Season 2. Season 2. Season 2 was nowhere near as good as Season 1, as the story mission was a whole lot worse. Once again, it seemed, to me, if anything has mercenaries in this game, it's pretty much bad in my opinion. I know that's kind of a dumb opinion to have and super basic opinion, but I just don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy what they add to the story. I'd much rather be going in, doing some simple soul boxes, which in turn lead to this mysterious entity when falling, rather than going into the dark ether and having to work together with mercenaries to get out. Like, the story didn't really add anything in terms of what the dark ether was about. It's just sort of was like a filler episode of the dark ether. The new enemy added in with this dark ether was the shock variant of elite enemies, which really sucked, as I think these guys have more health than the elite enemies, which just leads in more to the bullet sponge issue that a lot of enemies had in this game. But it's also annoying because, unlike in Black Ops 6, where you'll only get shocked if you get grabbed, which, just in turn just leads to a greater punishment, you'll just get shocked periodically once they just feel like doing a pulse. And the shock is pretty bad, as you're unable to sprint, which can quickly lead to a down, especially within harder dark ether levels, as the zombies will be constantly sprinting. But that's not even the worst part about all this. The worst part by far has to go to the Infected Stronghold, which is really funny because this was supposed to be the more main selling point and the main gimmick of the new Dark Ether, but it's just horrible. It's a large map which has way too many spore spots. Thankfully, these spots aren't as evil as they could be. Thankfully, they're generally in the main area instead of being like within a little store corner or whatever. It's still not very fun. It would be worth it if the loot was actually good, which it by far isn't. The loot in this thing is absolute terrible. It's on par with like a regular infected stronghold in like maybe tier 2 and sometimes in tier 3. Yeah, it's not great. And also, the strongholds doesn't even work as you don't even need to shoot all the spores in order to open the loot. You just walk right up to the chest and open them. After completing the stronghold, we do more of the little escort quests we've been on and do a quick P&D outlast, and then fight the final boss, being a shock mangler, which, as I said, shock variants aren't great in this game. They could be a lot better, and thankfully Black Ops 6 has shown how they can be better. But the one good thing about this story mission was the items necessary to unlock the main Dark Ether was actually their base variants were in this story mission rather than having to do outside in the overworld, which kind of added a nice sense of a little bit of a speed run to this story mission where you want to get through it fast so you have enough time to do everything else, and can be a bit of a time crunch if you can do it, but it's still more than possible and still pretty easy. Like I said, I won't be going through how to actually unlock all this because you can't re-unlock the Dark Ether portals once you've done it once. However, although the story of season 2 might have fell a little bit short, one area that was a lot better than the next seasons coming up were the schematics added within season 2. But the first new schematic added was the Bloodburner keys, which is pretty simple as it just makes the Bloodburner spawn in, which means that you don't need to go hunting around the whole map finding the singular randomized spawn. Although do be careful because it's very easy to have your bike stolen. Although you have the keys to it, people can still hop on and steal the bike from you. But as I said before, Bloodburner is a really good mobility vehicle and can be a great pick when you don't have a Scorcher. The second schematic is the Mags of Holding. The Mags of Holding are much better and definitely help carry this Dark Ether in terms of actually being alright, as it pretty much just gives you stock option from Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 3. Unfortunately, this doesn't work on Wonder Weapons, but it had to balance it some way, and overall it's still really good, especially when used on something like an RLG rocket launch. And the final schematic isn't actually a classified schematic. It's actually the only one in the Darky that isn't a classified tier, which is the VR11. By far a crazy pick for this game, as thankfully it still keeps a lot of its base mechanics of turning zombies into humans, and even has the additional benefit of turning humans into zombies, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, it doesn't give an insta-kill effect to your teammates, but instead just gives a damage boost, which, although I guess does balance it a little bit more, would still have been pretty funny, especially if you had to pack 3 it in order to be insta-kill, but I guess I get where they're coming from. But the cool thing about the VR11 is what happens when you shoot a vehicle. Now, at first, you might think nothing crazy, right? I mean, maybe it just does a bit of damage, or maybe it does nothing at all. But what it actually does is it heals the vehicle. It'll actually repair and can be useful when a vehicle is about to blow up. But where it's more useful is on a ACV, as the ACV is also counted as a vehicle in this game. So this makes it so any ACV contract is just super easy. The season 1 contract, which was very hard and a requirement in order to get the Ether Blade, was just made trivial because of this gun, which is a cool way to feel overpowered because, granted, it does make it easy, but the VR11 isn't great at clearing zombies. It's just as a support weapon, and it's in order to use it, you have to sacrifice your second weapon slot, where you could instead take like a Wonder Waff or a Scorcher for mobility. You have to instead take a gun that's useful in only one scenario, but it does that one scenario really well. And also, as I mentioned, it's just a super nice pick that they brought the VR11 back. Like, super unique pull, as even looking at its base map, Call of the Dead, they could have definitely something a lot easy to implement in the game, such as the Scavenger, which nothing to hate on the Scavenger, but is a pretty standard weapon. I mean, even regular snipers nowadays can have ammo mods for explosive damage. Again, nothing to hate on Scavenger, but Year 11 was definitely a cool pick, and I'm glad they implemented it in a way that kept a lot of its unique features instead of just being bored and doing something like apply the turned effect on a zombie and it keeps it as a zombie. But that's kind of the end of season 2. Unlike season 1, there was no red worm added in. It was just the Dark Ether and the story, which brings us on to season 3 was the complete opposite of season 2, I feel like, where it had a better story. As in the story, we actually confront the entity, the main antagonist of the story, and get a bit more explanation of what it is and who Dr. Ava is and how she sort of fits into this whole story. Like, we knew she was a researcher, but we didn't realize just how important she actually was kind of before this. It was sort of hinted at before that she had some sort of dark ether power or whatever, but it made a really cool way to kind of showcase that in this. Like, the story mission isn't overly complicated, just like all the other one, where it just has us simply going around doing a few puzzles. We do a quick few full boxes and a mini boss fight, which is definitely the worst part about this story. Now, the boss fight, a boss disciple. Now, initially isn't bad, and if you got a team of people, he's pretty easy to take out. But this guy really shows just how much of a harder this game is as a solo. As unlike normal disciples, when he spawns in zombies, he'll always spawn in special zombies, or sometimes even a mega abominations in some variants of him. But the annoying part is he'll turn completely invincible. And the worst part about being invincible as a disciple is he can still heal off you. So unless you can take out the special enemies fast or nuke him to death before he can even do anything, he'll just be at full health and you'll be able to stuck doing nothing to him. All around, he's a pretty annoying enemy type added this game, and unfortunately, they like to use this guy a lot, unlike the worms where they're like, he's here once and twice. This guy is all over the place, and he's used, I think, like 4 separate times. And unlike with the worms, is nowhere near as unique or cool in terms of both design and how the fight actually takes place. But before we head into the actual Dark Ether, thankfully, unlike season 2, season 3 added another little side thing to do in the main overworld. Little triangle puzzle. First off, you have to shoot 3 runes, which can be found across the area. Then, a highlighted triangle will appear. In order to complete the puzzle, you must form the triangle, which I really like, and I feel like it's really cool as it uses this 3D open space that you have in a mode like this compared to the more linear space of modern zombies and even old zombies. It's just a nice little puzzle, and I liked it. Moving into the actual Dark Ether itself, it's sort of the opposite of season 2. Dark Ether, sick. As even the gimmick for this one is much better. Thankfully, there's no stupid infected stronghold on this one, but instead they decided to add 2. The first being every single contract, instead of just being a little Mr. Peaks bunny, each contract is an obelisk, which once interacted with will actually give you an additional power up. There's 3 paths. Unfortunately, these have to be in your backpack in order to work, which does mean only one player can have access to the power up and means that you have to take out more either supplies or loot that you would otherwise have. But the 3 power ups are all right. There's one which just increases your base movement speed. There's another which will cause a special enemy to drop a nuke periodically. And the final one makes it so headshots do more damage and have an explosive kill on death. These aren't super out of the pocket cool, but unfortunately they don't come back, which kind of sucks. It would have been cool to either have these in the overworld area, or at least in the upcoming challenges. But the other gimmick of this Dark Ether is after each contract is completed, a spore in the middle of the map where the exit portal is will become revealed. You can't reveal these with a inhibitor like normal. It has to be done through the contract. But after you complete each contract and destroy all 3 spores, you'll be able to do a secret optional boss fight, which unfortunately is a disciple boss. Now, this guy is actually pretty difficult. Like I said before, you need to either nuke this guy with a lot of damage off the bat, or you're just not going to be able to kill him. And he's unfortunately one of the few things in this game I haven't been able to do as a solo, which kind of sucks. But I have still killed him, and it's pretty cool. As in a normal sigil run, he'll guarantee give you a Elder Sigil, and in a Elder Sigil run, he'll give you another chance to add a schematic. Also, on the first time you defeat him, you do get one of the secret blueprints that I mentioned at the start of the video, which is alright. Definitely could be a little bit better, but overall, still a decent reward. But I definitely recommend fighting this guy as a team and not as a solo. This leads us on to schematics once again. First being the golden mask filter. The golden mask filter will work pretty similar to the gold armor plates, as instead of being for your armor plates, will be for your gas mask. The only downside to the gas mask is just your gas mask can break still, which means that your player will pull off the mask and just kind of throw it away, which sucks because I wish it worked like where with the gold armor plates, where you don't need a plate in the vest in order to regen a plate. I wish the mask worked as it would have kept it maybe at like 1%, but still removed it off the player and then slowly regen like it does when you got outside. Fortunately, this doesn't fix a lot of the problem with the gas mask itself, as you still have to be careful that it doesn't break. The next schematic is the Sergeant's Beret. Now this one surprised me, as when it initially came out, I wanted to use this thing on the ether extractors, as it gives you the disguise to enemies. But when it first came out, I tried this and it didn't work. Like enemies detected me right away and I wasn't able to do anything. But as you can see, when I went to grab footage for this, it just worked. I don't know if I got really lucky with this footage, but I don't know. At first I thought like, oh, maybe it was a tier 1 contract, so that's why it didn't work. So as you can see, I'm going over and doing a tier 2, but yeah, it just works. Even though I'm a sergeant holding a Wonder Waff, it just worked. The Sergeant Bear also gives you a friendly soldier, but he's nowhere as good as a dog, as he'll only revive you if he's not swarmed by zombies, which is almost always all the time. Honestly, the Sergeant Bear is so good. I'm honestly just going to move up the Ether Extractor a little bit from the tier list. As, you know what? It's pretty good with the beret. It surprised me. I didn't think it would work. And I'm really happy it is, as it was an idea I had initially had when it came out, and I wish it worked. But hey, it works now. Now, the final schematic is the dead wire detonator. The dead wire detonators are pretty good, as any explosive damage will have the dead wire effect applied to it. This works great with RGL, but it also is funny as it works with tacticals like stun grenades or gas grenades, which can make an otherwise unlethal tactical pretty lethal. But that's the end of Season 3. A lot better than Season 2, but a lot of the schematics were a whole lot worse than that of Season 2. Like, the VR11 completely trumps the Sergeant's Beret. And although the Deadwire detonators are pretty good, they're still not as good an upgrade as the Mags of Holding. As the Mags can be used on any gun, the Deadwires are really only good at making the RGL, which is already broken, completely busted. Season 4 was by far the weirdest season, and definitely is the worst season, as we didn't get a new Dark Ether, we didn't get new schematics, we didn't get a new story. all we got was these new obelisks around the map, which could be activated with a corresponding element, which is needed to unlock the new Unstable Rift. The new Unstable Rift is alright. It's a bit too hard to make the reward worth it. Like, the reward is broken, don't get me wrong. Like, having a complete reduction on every single schematics cooldown is crazy good. But with the addition of being able to use Essence to also reduce the time, definitely wasn't as good, especially with not how hard the Unstable Rift is. It requires you to go through 5 very long waves of zombies, which each wave adding in a new enemy type, being special enemies, adding in then elite enemies, then shock enemies, and then a boss disciple at the end, which thankfully can't go invincible, and thankfully does not spawn a mega abomination, but overall, it just doesn't make it worth it. The Stable Rift is the final thing in this game I haven't been able to do solo just because I didn't feel like using a glitch spot in order to do it. For the first time, it definitely is worth it as the camo you get is really sick. And but unfortunately, like I said, that was it for Season 4. There was only the Unstable Rift and the Obelisk added throughout the map. It definitely was a dark time for the Modern Warfare 3 zombies as we didn't get any content. But fortunately, Season 5 would more than make up for this. Season 5 was well worth the wait. Although it sucked having nothing for Season 4, Season 5 more than made up with it, by far having the best of everything. The best environment, the best story. Maybe not the best schematics. They were not as good as the first or even second Dark Ether, but it's at the end of the game. I think the devs were mainly running out of ideas what to do at this point. But by far, the best in everything else. The environment is completely different compared to its Warzone counterpart, with having crystals to jump you around everywhere. And the story mission was pretty good, as it has you interacting with everything you've done before. Every single artifact you had to pick up in order to unlock the Dark Ethers, you have to use here. But in terms of difficulty, like all the other ones, it's not too bad. We unfortunately never got anything really as hard as the first worm boss fight in the first one. I think they definitely wanted to tone back the difficulty for a lot of these stories missions, just so as many people as wanted to could experience these and leave more of the difficulty for the Dark Ether itself, which it definitely has this time around. We'll get to that. But one thing that was sick about this was the final boss fight. The boss fight was the entity itself. Now, everything was leading up to this, and it was a pretty cool fight. Although the fight can be kind of trivialized with a Juggernaut, as this is the one boss where it doesn't get the flat out nerf to it. The boss fight is pretty standard. Shoot the weak point, avoid the wipe attacks, and the second phase definitely could have been a whole lot better, but all in all, it was a pretty good fight. But that kind of concludes the main story of Modern Warfare 3. I don't want to get too much into it because it's kind of boring, the story, but it was alright, and the ending of this kind of was a good segue into the past, being Black Ops 6, which has been okay because of storytelling. Some maps have been weak, some maps have been better, but I'm not talking about Black Ops 6 here. I'm talking about Modern Warfare 3, so. But we still have a final Dark Ether to tackle. Now, before I actually do talk about Dark Ether, the two schematics added in was first the Disciple bottle, which is mods in the friendly Disciple. He's alright. Still not as good as a dog, though. The other one is the Grenade Bandolier is pretty good upgrade. It's final of the Gold Saga, where instead of having your armor recharge or your mask recharge, instead your equipment will recharge, which can be really good as it'll even recharge stuff like Casimirs and Monkey Bombs, which can save you a lot of money if you like to run a whole lot of these, as once you one charge it, you can simply drop the Casimir, pick it back up and just store it in your backpack. And when each one of these costs 5,000 points, getting one for free, especially when you have a lot of time before you go into the Dark Ether, you can tend to get a lot of these just for free, just for waiting around. Ah, finally, the final Dark Ether. The best thing about this Dark Ether is not only are the rewards great, as you can find a lot of gold tools and a lot of tier 3 crystals, but also the difficulty. The difficulty of this Dark Ether was unlike any other that came before. Granted, the contracts are pretty standard, being a PND escort, but they also decided to add a Spore. The Spore contract is by far the easiest, just being pretty spread out as compared to other Spore contracts. But the PND and escort are a bit different. The PND starts off as normal, well, as normal as it can be in the Dark Ether with all the manglers and mimics that throw you away. However, at about 50% of the way through, the game will spawn in a shock enemy, being either a mimic or mangler, just to add into the chaos of already. The escort contract is by far the longest in the game, and I think takes around like 5 minutes or probably even longer just to complete. It's a long escort, as I think you have to go through 6 fissures in order to complete it. And even at the end of the contract, the game will decide to spawn in a abomination, and even in an elder variant, a disciple which spawns in an elder abomination. Thankfully, the disciple doesn't go invincible when the abomination is out, but still can make it pretty challenging at that final step. However, the VR11 still makes it pretty easy, and if you really want to, you can fly to the end of the contract and fight the disciple before the ACV even gets there. But, as with every Dark Ether, there is a gimmick, and this one by far had the best, being just a lot of Easter eggs. And it all starts R4D detector. This will allow you to see things with a thermal vision across the map. This leads to a lot of Easter eggs, but the main one that I'm going to be talking about is for a secret optional boss fight. To do this, you have to first follow these arrows on the wall in order to get to a maze. Then, using the R4D detector throughout the maze, you have to follow every arrow. This can be pretty difficult, especially if you're doing this alone or every member of your team is here, as all the zombies will be funneled into one area, and it's pretty close quarters within the maze. But after the maze, you receive a damp gold skull. Unlike a regular gold skull, this can be traded in at a golden whale to receive a USB stick. This USB stick can then be taken to the northern part of the map and spawn in a mangler known as the key holder. After killing the mangler, you can take the dropped key to the top of the main high-rise tower and unlock a secret room. This room will almost always have a free wonder weapon, but in an Elder run will also lead to the boss fight. However, there's one issue with these hard contracts and long Easter egg is that both take a whole lot of time, and especially if you wanted to go to the boss fight in the Elder version, you only have 15 minutes, and if every single person on the team works towards doing the boss fight or doing the contracts, you can't get everything done, which is the best part about this Dark Ether, as it requires you to split up if you want to get everything done. Now, of course, in order to split up, you need to have a team first. So step one is to acquire teammates. Most of the time I end up doing this by either loading in with random and then just heading straight into tier 3 as done here. As most people are going to want to get set up with a lot of money first, which is, kind of the whole point. But after that, we head into the Dark Ether. Now, here I did notice that my teammates wanted to go into the other Dark Ether, but of course, I want to go into this one. This is where I use a little bit of a evil tactic, as I sort of just wait until this contract is done and then sort of just insert my sigil into the portal. This is a bit evil, I get it, but most people will just automatically accept yes on whatever portal is activated, especially if it's near the end of the game and most people are expecting to starting to go into a portal. So if you kind of just wait around and activate it, they'll say yes. Even this guy here, once he realizes, tries to leave the game, but as soon as that countdown starts, he's screwed. He's coming on in whether he likes it or not. Now, once we've made it into the Dark Ether with everybody here, whether they wanted to or not, first off, I like to grab the P&D contract. That way, just to ensure that it is grabbed as it's closest to the spore, which houses the R4D detector. After which, I just run over here through the maze. It's pretty simple now that I'm not doing this in a solo game, and most of the zombies are after my teammates instead of me. Also, one of my teammates actually wanted to follow me, which is cool. But yeah, as I grab the skull, you can see that the Outlast contract is actually about to finish, which is just great timing, as I can just come over here, grab the loot, drop the schematic for a teammate. But after which, I go to turn in the skull, which is conveniently right across from the PND. Just make my way up the stairs here and jump down onto the whale. After grabbing the USB, I head over to the escort, which thankfully is a contract that most people seem to grab second, which is great, as along the path of the escort is the building that we need to go into in order to spawn in the key holder. Now, about where I get to this bridge, which has a deadbolt turret on it, I like to go off it on my own in order to spawn him in. Now, thankfully, even if people don't know what you're doing, most of the time your teammates will help out killing this guy, as well. He has a giant red HVT marker on him, and most people, is just gonna see red and shoot. Thankfully, my teammates picks up the key at this point, which he just thankfully dropped for me, so I was able to show the rest of this out. Yeah, at this point, I just follow along and complete both the ACV contract, and then after which the Spore contract, as I've done all I needed to do in order to get the key. Once the ACV contract is done, I like to take this route past over here to jump just quickly to the top of the building, just to make sure that the key is in the door in case anybody's up here earlier. As thankfully, as you'll see, when you get by the rift, it'll actually indicate that all players need to be nearby. And thankfully, the range that it tells people this is outside of the little room itself with the portal. But after this, we just complete the Spore contract and we head into the boss fight. Now, the boss fight really isn't anything to write home about. It really is just the same entity fight, but instead she's in her second phase. Although you don't need to take her out of her invincibility. The only real difficulty with this fight comes with the fact that the normal enemies are at a dark ethereal level of difficulty compared to the standard level 2 of story missions. But that's about it. That's it in terms of the major content that this game had. 4 dark ethers, a ton of classified schematics. Fortunately, no new contracts, which kinda sucks, but all around, that leaves one thing left, and that is Season 6. Season 6 was a very weird season, as we knew going into it that there wasn't going to be a major update, as Season 5 was definitely the end. But thankfully, there was still a little something. It was a thank you letter from the devs. And it only came with 2 changes that really mattered. There was probably some bug fixes as well, but the 2 changes were as follows. First, we had every schematic in the game have their cooldown cut in half. Now, this actually still exists today and is great, as the devs aren't really relying on people to come back to this game every day to use their schematics. So, pretty much you'll always have them fill. And the second change, which doesn't exist anymore, which is the removed requirement of needing a normal sigil in order to enter a normal dark ether. They probably did this as they wanted to make sure that a lot of people could get in and see the final bits of content without having to wait on something like a normal sigil in order to get in. But with that, that was all the seasonal content. Some was good, some was bad, some definitely had a lot more unique traits to it compared to others, but all around it was good. However, one thing that this game definitely has over round base is the community. The community was the best thing about this game, as it felt like I got to actually interact with people, as compared to round base. You sort of just load in the game and you whoever you have, you just have to deal with them. A public match isn't really fun in round base, as most of the times you'll get bad teammates and just be stuck with them. And even when you get somebody that's good, it's very likely that somebody's gonna have to do something in the middle of a match and just leave. Like in the newer games, it's okay if someone leaves, but if you boot up Black Ops 2 or Black Ops 3 and don't get hacked, if someone leaves in the middle of the game, that's it. Game's over. You have to restart from round 1. And this could happen as early as like round 10 when you're just getting into it. Where Modern Warfare 3 doesn't have this issue. If someone leaves the game, it's whatever. The game still goes on. You still have the hour left. And everyone who's going into the game knows that they have an hour. So a lot of the time, I don't feel like I see people having to leave in the middle of a game. The other thing that's great about interacting with the community in this way is they make it super easy to interact with people. Like I mentioned before, the team building in this game is super good. You can easily join a team, leave a team, talk in the global chat to put a team together. Even if you're not on the same team as somebody, you can still revive a random person you see on the ground. There's the police system, which makes it a little bit easier for the game, but it requires you to interact with somebody in order to save your run. But with this great community, there is still one problem, is that if it dies out, the game dies out. This isn't round based where you can boot it up whenever you want. The game unfortunately needs people in order to start a game. And unfortunately, there'll be a day where this unique experience of Modern Warfare Zombies will die out and it'll just be gone. It'll be history. This isn't round based where time is infinite. You can boot up the game years later. And I hope they actually address this issue of the game just sort of ending with Black Ops 6 being fully online. Because at the end of the day, that hourly timer MW3 will run out for one final time. And for the final time, that'll just be it. It's not infinite. It'll just be dead. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I know this video wasn't the best, but what are you gonna do? It's my first video. I'm still learning a lot and definitely have learned a lot from making this video. A lot of things that I'm definitely not gonna do for my next videos, which, speaking of which, aren't gonna be long like this. I mean, I might make a similar video once Black Ops 6 has ended, but I want to also try doing different types of videos, not just these long post analysis voiceover heavy videos. I want to also try doing some live commentary, which is what I'm probably going to post next. Again, thanks for actually making it all the way here, and I'll see you next time.